that you skinny and shit. Thought you were taking my place. Thought you were winning the race.
Hello everyone! I feel like a lot of people responded well to the fact that I'm releasing more commentaries before the end of this year, and I'm so happy to announce that Jenny Han's The Summer I Turned Pretty is finally being added to our commentary playlist rotation. If you don't know what The Summer I Turned Pretty is, I envy you. I feel like every time Jenny Han releases something, it's me versus her. But like, I already had to deal enough with Exo Kitty, okay? Because we have a very complicated relationship, alright? And I'm gonna explain that complicated relationship with you in this video. Grab your Kool-Aid drinks spiked with alcohol, and go grab your hot cocoa and join me by the fireplace while we discuss my likes, dislikes, and my overall opinion of The Summer I Turned Pretty. The Summer I Turned Pretty basically follows this Asian American girl named Belly Conklin. The premise of the show is her turning into this beautiful girl where she goes under this transformation of turning into a girl with braces and glasses and very stereotypical unpretty, unattractive girl, and suddenly turns into the object of desire between her two childhood friends, Conrad Fisher and Jeremiah Fisher, and she can't choose. It's a whole dilemma between them, very messy, very love triangle-esque. It interestingly focuses on, I use that word very, very lightly, the friendship between the Conklins, Laurel, Stephen, and Belly, and the Fishers, which consist of Susanna, Jeremiah, and Conrad. This sort of show kind of monopolizes on the Team Edward and Team Jacob kind of aspect of the show. At least in Twilight, when I make this comparison, Bella chooses Edward, you know? She doesn't leave Jacob, like, hanging. She's just like, I'm choosing Edward. Like, Edward's my man. That's what she said. Quote that. But in comparison, Belly kind of makes that unconscious or conscious decision, we don't really know, to keep both boys on a short leash, kind of pulling them back to her whenever she finds interest in them again. Honestly, I don't want to see comments to say that who are Belly defenders say like, she's just a teenage girl. When you were a teenager, you probably didn't know what you wanted either. And I hate when people use this kind of as an excuse to excuse Belly's actions, to kind of say that, oh, because she's young, she doesn't know what she's doing. The only argument I have to kind of combat the reason why people think that Belly is just a kid, she's just a teenager, is a good argument, is to think a little more carefully here, okay? Human beings, they're basically made to make mistakes. They're supposed to learn from those mistakes. And that's like, it's basic psychology. We're just gonna go down to basic parenting here. When we as kids learn not to do something, we know that there will be a bad reaction. I'll emphasize this with the overall glaring scene when Belly has to tell Jeremiah that she and Conrad had a moment and essentially just wanted to choose him to be with him because in her heart, she knows she's a Conrad girl. Basically, feels like she needs his blessing too because number one, she has started something with Jeremiah and now she wants to start something with her brother, so now she has to be like, okay, like if I want to pursue this person, his older brother, I have to know where I stand on this. And rightfully so, Jeremiah goes off on her saying that like he'll just be waiting here until Conrad loses interest in her and then she goes back to him. He understands that kind of pattern between them. This even happens again in season 2 when Conrad has to see Belly choosing Jeremiah over him. There is a negative reaction there. I especially think that this attitude definitely stems from the fact that she got pretty over the summer. I think her idea of being a pretty girl, there is no repercussions to her actions and to the fact that she feels that she is able to get away with things because of that association, because now that she's viewed as an object of beauty, and you can say, no, she's a teenager, she can do blah, blah, blah. She wouldn't have acted this way. Keep this in mind. I want you to keep this in mind a little bit while you follow me here. I want you to keep in mind that she didn't do this when she was considered unattractive, like when she considered herself unattractive. But now that she views herself as someone of beauty, of someone of worth, now that tune has changed. And honestly, I think Belly kind of takes that characteristic, that kind of belief from her best friend, Taylor. Because Belly holds Taylor to this kind of standard, she always believed that Taylor was the pretty girl. We can hear it in her monologue to herself, that Taylor was the kind of person that has attraction to her, that always has attention. I think that kind of feeded into that idea that Taylor was pretty, she could be with any guy of her choosing. Like, she didn't have to settle, she didn't have to worry about if people thought she was pretty or not, or people wanted her or not. Call it what you want, but I believe that because Taylor is her standard of beauty, Belly sort of takes over that righteousness. She believes that she can get away with things a lot easier, mostly thinks about herself. herself because that's what Taylor does. She kind of entertains it in a way that basks in their attention because it is the summer she turned pretty, so now this kind of newfound attention is on her. I use a lot of quotations a lot just because Belly only sees one side of pretty privilege. She kind of refuses to see anything else because Taylor fails to provide her the downsides of the pretty privilege, or that other side of the coin. There is a lot of negatives in the relationship. There might be negatives with her or with the other person, and overall just what the downside of being pretty is, and she only provides the positives. It is kind of debatable, but you keep in mind that Taylor is the one in control of what she tells Belly. We know that there is a possibility that she sort of downplays the severity of the aftermath of her actions and basically only tells a story where she is the object of desire and everyone else just fights for her attention. Honestly, I find that a lot of Jenny Han's works are kind of the same melting pot where they just throw in a bunch of tropes and hope something sticks. We have the childhood friends to lovers, we have sunshine and grumpy relationship, we also have best friend's brother kind of relationship. Right person, wrong time, that was a big one. And I feel like that's a very big trope in the Summer I Turned Pretty TV show and books as well. And Jenny Han's attempt at the enemies to lovers thing. We saw how it was in XO Kitty. We all saw it. But if you didn't, watch the video. Watch the video. I personally believe that Jenny Han is really great at advertising the Summer I Turned Pretty and giving it an aesthetic and making the viewers or the readers feel fully immersed into the storyline she has created to really make them feel that they are experiencing the teenage experience through Belly and giving that summer girl aesthetic. We have the road trips, the bonfires, underage drinking, partying, but I think Jenny Han forgot like a really big part of the teenager experience, and that would be the teenager. Not all teenagers are the same, and it kind of just shows that everyone who is in this show has the same idea of what the teenage experience is. There's no individuality between them. Or The Summer I Turned Pretty is just a show that basically throws Asian protagonists against the wall and lets them be caught in the arms of their white counterparts. I wouldn't say that this is a consistent pattern, but we've all seen To All the Boys I Love You For. We also had a switch up in relationships season 2 for Steven and Taylor. Now, a lot of people really like this ship. They think it really fits. Honestly, I think that it was just another filler ship because the love triangle gets kind of boring. They kind of shift to that perspective instead. Imagine like being in a relationship and then you just choose to like always talk about your sister and who she's gonna be with.
And sure, Jared's easier. Yeah, but that's the whole thing. You know, he doesn't challenge Belly.
He's deeper than a lot of people give her credit for. She deserves someone who sees all the amazing complex things that she has to offer.
If you didn't know, there was a character named Shayla. She was Steven's first love interest in season 1. In season 2, they sort of trash Shayla's and Steven's entire build-up, their entire relationship and chemistry, in favor of the always been you trope between Steven and Taylor. There is a consensus among people in relationships and people who have suffered from terrible relationships that men who cheat will most likely cheat again. Like, even if they are in a different relationship with different people, you can't just exclude that fact. Even though this technically wasn't a real relationship, there wasn't a definitive definition what they were, Shayla and Steven, but there was still something there that both of them agreed on that they felt in that moment with each other. And honestly, I want to give Jenny Han the benefit of the doubt that this was a growing attraction between them and that's always been there, or it just like happened off screen. But season 1, Steven had always thought of Shayla up until he and Taylor kissed at Belly's birthday party. No one wants to hear it, but you will hear it from me. It is Steven's fault because he is the one in the relationship and he gave into that kind of temptation. But playing the I've been in love with him since forever card in response to kissing not only your best friend's brother but a taken man as well is a whole new kind of low. He doesn't see this as a problem, obviously not, because like she doesn't care that she hurts Shayla's feelings. She doesn't care when she hurts other people's feelings, as long as she gets what she wants. It's petty, even for a 16-year-old. I feel like it's not a big deal when you look at it as a whole, but let's keep in mind that Jenny Han and her team of writers, they decided to bring it up specifically. So there's a point in season 1 where Steven is basically this kind of like server to a bunch of rich white old men in like an underground like gambling club.
Oh, I'm sure you got a perfect score. One of the partners at my firm, Chinese guy, all his kids got into the Ivies. I think those people were born with textbooks. You end
He was basically being stereotyped. Like, you can see that he was obviously bothered by it, and then he was told to like, oh, just don't mind them, just like be better than them in the future. It's honestly like pretty interesting to see that Jenny Han had chose to display the classism between the Conklins and the Fishers over an actual issue she had to overcome when publishing The Summer I Turned Pretty. And if you didn't know the drama between that, The Summer I Turned Pretty was initially turned down as a book because Jenny Han had chosen to make Belly person of color, and then was told by her publishing company that she couldn't do that because no one was going to read it, so she had to make Belly white. It's kind of interesting that when you have that kind of history behind your book and you make like a jab at racism, that you don't show a resolution, you don't show this character growing. It's kind of just like a side mention. Neither of the boys, Jeremiah and Conrad, they don't put in the effort to be Steven's friend even after the whole drama that happened with Belly. And it's completely normal to limit the contact between yourself and your ex-girlfriend's brother, but you have to keep this in mind that they were all childhood friends, okay? It's not like Steven went to summer camp every summer and he missed out on the chance to bond with these guys. But it was already hard enough for Belly not to even understand that she's the common denominator why the boys aren't okay and why they're not talking to her brother. They were both in love with her, fell out of their relationship as brothers, but the fact that they had to miss Steven, one of their best friends, his graduation as a valedictorian because of Belly is kind of like insane. Like, you are all friends. You all had grown up together into this tight brother-sister maybe relationship. I want to say that Steven's like sort of anger towards Belly is justified. He's upset that the brothers he's basically grown up with his entire life, they weren't there to celebrate his special day with him, and he's probably imagined this 100 times. Like, there was no other way he could imagine it, because like, to imagine yourself but also standing side by side with the people you're about for this massive accomplishment, like, you have to understand the predicament Belly also is in. She couldn't decide which brothers to end up with, and if she did end up choosing Team Conrad or Team Jeremiah, she's basically pinning one brother against the other. Say that Jeremiah's feelings towards Belly were sort of just out of jealousy, they were childish, or like they were as real compared to Conrad's. It feels wrong to say that, because maybe he did feel jealous that Belly picked Conrad because he knew that Belly had always liked him. There was always a crush there for her. Realistically, no person wants to see their sibling hurt, you know what I mean? No one wants to see them so emotionally distraught like over one person. It's like insane to me that that sort of detail has to be pointed out to her because she is a sibling as well. Like, could you imagine just being compared to your sibling? I feel like that's a big thing that people aren't really understanding. Belly, she plays both sides. We know this. We've seen it before, we'll see it again. Ultimately tears up this brotherly bond between them. And it's honestly so sad because when you think about it, they probably won't be able to have the same relationship again. Because Belly had like been physically away from them. They were like unable to like see her or have that interaction with her or have that kind of like distraught within them to say, who is Belly gonna choose, me or him? But they repaired their bond when Belly was gone. They have somewhat of a normal standing after all that drama. But if the story continues with Belly just ending up with one of the Fisher boys and they fight and one of them eventually ends up winning and being with her in the end, I think that connection between the two brothers, that sibling bond, will forever be tarnished. There is no going back from that. Seeing how close Conrad and Jeremiah were, and if someone were to come out as a victor to this sort of drama between them and Belly, I think in the future they are definitely just gonna be one of those civil siblings. They'll just choose to be civil just for Belly's sake, and their moms as well, and the memories they had with her and with each other when they were that close. It's so heartbreaking to even consider that kind of aspect of that relationship being over when Belly would have to choose. I feel like both of them really wanted this relationship to work out, especially with Susanna's cancer coming back. But you have to keep in mind they were both grieving, and Belly was sort of holding on to this ideal fairy tale-esque idea of the fact that they were still in love and that they could conquer their shared pain. In summer together, they have that fantasy where they can be together forever. But realistically, when we just look at them in general, Belly is just about to finish high school. She's thinking about what college she wants to get to, and Conrad is figuring out what he wants to do with his life. Like, he is pursuing a major, he's about to go into medicine. But yeah, I believe that their grief was way too strong, and because they were both grieving the same woman and their relationship to her, they couldn't pursue that sort of relationship because number one, like, they needed that stability, but they couldn't find that in each other to even keep themselves like afloat, to even really enjoy this relationship. Belly telling Susanna that Conrad broke up with her when it was really the other way around is so like it's so horrendously foul and selfish for her to do that. And because you're telling your now ex-boyfriend's mom, who like wished for you to be with one of her boys and who is also on her deathbed, that you need her support. This isn't just the grief of the relationship. She's grieving the fact that her last moment, Susanna, will basically be spent on like her like regret on not being able to fulfill the dream that she has for her. She knows she needs Susanna on her side on this, and to sort of tell her in this sort of security blanket and tell her that it was all right that she didn't end up with either of her boys. I feel like Belly's like mourning Conrad, like the long-term crush she's had on Conrad. She's mourning the kind of version of Conrad she had in her head, because like while Conrad might have been all those things, that grief sort of like took him away from that kind of experience for her.
You're in bloom.
There is this common comment going around that Belly was just fulfilling Susanna's wish of her ending up with one of her boys. Belly is like 16. You're putting that much pressure on a 16-year-old when she hasn't even decided what major she wants to go into. Like she has her whole life ahead of her. It's actually so sick and twisted. Like it's a sick psychological trick put on a 16-year-old. Because when you think about it, like she now has to worry about her one true love, whether she'll end up with Jeremiah or Conrad. That experience of her like being with other people has basically been taken away from her. She probably will not be in another relationship with another guy. And like she'll feel super guilty about it because that goes against Susanna's last wish for her. And like that grief of her losing her mother figure, it binds her to it. So like before she might have been able to be with Cam Cameron, even though her heart still wanted Conrad, but at the same time, if you think about it, if she had ended up with another boy, like Cam Cameron, let's put him as an example. If she ended up with Cam Cameron at the end, could you imagine that kind of like distraught Belly would be through? Think that any of the characters in this TV show had any proper time to grieve or had a proper way to grieve to like healthily show it, because when we see Belly and her perspective of her grief, we see that she has a bit of resentment towards everyone who has moved on without her. We see that Conrad's moved on with college, he's about to move up a year, Jeremiah's partying, and like, Steven's about to move away for college. And like we also have to acknowledge that like people grieve in different ways, but in Belly's perspective, she still has that kind of burden where she didn't end up with either of the boys. It's why she becomes much bolder with Jeremiah, I think, because if she couldn't have one, he's fallen back into the safety net of the other.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I ruining your fun night, Mr. Perfect Valedictorian?
Kinda, yeah.
Okay, well, in case you forgot, which it clearly seems like you did, Susanna just died, so I'm a little bit sad, but please don't let that stop you from having the time of your life.
We were emotionally invested in this house because this house basically was just about Susanna and them. And I think that the only reason why they were very eager to get rid of the New York house was because it was where Susanna kind of spent her last moments in pain. Conrad had found out his dad had cheated on his mom during her first round of chemo. And it had also, I'm presuming that it was the place where the post-funeral gathering was. So there was so much negative emotion towards this house, so they were eager to get rid of it. Honestly, the house party was super disrespectful. Think about it like this. House has just been in her family for generations. Like her mom's mom has probably lived in that house. Even though she is the fun parent, I guess, between her and Laurel, everyone has boundaries. I think that is the most important thing we can learn here. Everyone has boundaries and they shouldn't be pushed. Essentially, by letting these horde of people in wasn't a remembrance party in the name of the woman you love. This is not a goodbye to Susanna. This is a big middle finger to Julia. We treat this opportunity selfishly, essentially ruined the image of Susanna in this house. They disrespected her and allowed other people and their party to violate the last good memory they had of her.
It wasn't fine, and
Belly unfortunately suffers from having the Bella Swan treatment, and what I'm basically talking about is that Bella Swan iconically is known to not really have a story outside of her own love story. Think of 5 things that Belly is. I don't want you to give me the basic answers to say, oh yeah, she's beautiful, she's smart, she's all these kind of things. Those are shallow answers. The truth of the matter is anyone can be those kind of things. Even Laurel, even Jeremiah, even Steven, even Taylor. What makes her unique? Why make her the main character? Was it really just about pretty privilege? Why does this story matter above all the other ones? I can give you 5 things off the top of my head of what Belly is. She's a volleyball player. She is a daughter, a sister, a best friend, and she's a love interest. Realistically, she is nothing more than these things, because even her volleyball arc, her volleyball interest, is not even explored. If you take her out of her love story, who is she? And unfortunately, there aren't that many things to list off of to call Belly, because outside of her love story, outside of Jeremiah and Conrad, and even outside of her grief, we don't know who she is. And she is just another character that is just going to be focusing on love. And there's nothing wrong with that. The only reason why I'm mentioning this is because Jenny Han deliberately introduces the idea that Belly has a future beyond her grief and beyond this love story. There is an introduction to her gaining further education. And good for her, honestly. Not everybody wants to go to college, and that's totally fine. But for Belly, that's in her cards. She wants to at least further her education into her chosen degree. But we don't know much about Belly beyond that. Does she choose to stay in her hometown? Does she choose to move abroad? Does she see herself being one of those party college kids? Or maybe she wants to be more studious so she never feels like she has to fall behind again. Maybe that's a little too far ahead. Let's think short term. What's Belly gonna major in college? Is she still gonna do volleyball? Is she gonna find a new interest? If she's undecided right now, does she have an idea of her path? Realistically, we know little to nothing about Belly, and I'm not saying that we should answer these questions right away, because we still have time to answer those questions and to figure out who Belly truly is or who she wants to be in the future. But the real reason why I'm bringing this up is because Belly shouldn't be one of those characters who her only priority is her love story. She should have something for herself that is not just about Conrad and Jeremiah. But yeah, I think that's all I have to add for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay? Bye! I'm gwynette. Bye bye. Bye!